Hello friends, my name is Marines, and today I'll be doing mini reviews for the 8 books that I read last month. I wanted to get this wrap up to you guys a little sooner, but this past week I have been battling a flu or a cold or something. I lost my voice completely, and today is the first day that it's like at least back that I can sustain a sentence. I probably still sound a little raspy. I probably sound worse to myself than I sound to you. And I don't know that straining my voice in order to do a whole video is like the thing to do, but I was so excited to get this out to you guys, and then also all of the rest of the videos that I have planned to wrap up my last year of reading, so we're doing it. I will be going through these books in order, like I ranked them from my least favorite to my favorite. Number 8, and by far the worst book that I read in December, was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. When I finished this book, I was like, I'm gonna do like a video review, and then I went to Goodreads and I had all these feelings. I also yelled about it on Twitter, and then after I did the Goodreads review, I was like, like I don't feel I got it out. I don't have to do a standalone review. But then I was getting ready to do this video and I realized that half of the video was gonna just be my feelings on Ninth House. And I was like, okay, Mari, do a standalone review, take a step back, get all your feelings out on that video, and then you can just link it. So that's what I'm doing. I will link you guys to my standalone review if you want like the full strength and breadth of my feelings on Ninth House. This is an adult fantasy book about a 20-year-old named Alex Stern who is recruited to Yale specifically because she can see ghosts. So she is involved in this secret society called Lethe, and the role of Lethe within the rest of the secret societies is kind of like to monitor and police them, as they are all involved in some element of like magic or the occult. Once Alex gets there and as she's learning the ropes of how the secret societies work, two different things happen. So her mentor, the person who's showing her the ropes, disappears, and then also there is a murder in the town just outside of Yale that she gets involved in. The long and the short of it is that I found that this was poorly paced and overwritten. I think that it kind of bogs down its own storyline with that dual timeline and with so many details that just felt so useless to me. Mostly I found the characters very one-dimensional, and there are a lot of bad people in the story, and I don't think that the strength of the main characters, like they weren't enough or like good enough or enough for me to really invest feelings in to counterbalance the fact that there were so many terrible people in this story. So in general, I didn't like anyone or anything in the story. And then on top of it all, the message of the story was one that completely missed with me. I think that at no point did Leigh really stop to think about what the message of her story was saying, especially as it pertained to Alex as her main character, Alex's identities, and then just adding magic into this idea of like systems of wealth and power and privilege. When I think about the story, the word that stands out to me is muddied. It just all felt muddied. The plot was muddied. The messages were muddied. Everything was like confused. And honestly, apart from like how I feel about from like a standpoint of like me critiquing the craft or the storytelling or anything like that, just a personal experience portion of it, I didn't have fun reading this. I didn't enjoy any part of reading this. I didn't get anything out of this. There wasn't anything like deeper to say like, well, this wasn't a enjoyable experience, but there was something here to glean from the story. There was nothing for me to take away from the story. It will be memorable for all of the wrong reasons. Because of that, and because of all of the ways that I just think that it was bad storytelling, I gave this 1 out of 5 stars. Next up is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This was my November 2019 pick for Book of the Month. It is a contemporary romance about a girl named Chloe Brown, and she almost gets hit by a car and has like one of those life flashing before her eyes moments, and she realizes that she's living like a very boring, sheltered kind of life. So she makes this list of ways to get a life, and it starts with her moving out of her family's home. So at her new place, at her new flat, she has a couple of run-ins with the superintendent named Redford Morgan, and he is an artist who is kind of taking a break from art and recovering from an abusive relationship. The two of them at first have like a couple of run-ins. They're not getting along. They kind of rub each other the wrong way, but then Chloe pulls Red into helping her complete the items on her list. I feel like it is as cute as Common Report. I found it super smooth and readable and enjoyable, but I think with contemporaries like this, they live and die on how much you personally enjoy the main characters. I liked Chloe and Red fine while I was reading them, but I don't find them especially memorable. There wasn't anything that like made them stand out to me. I think for me, part of it is that at the beginning, Chloe is well off and she's got this almost like posh, uptight veneer to her. You do learn as you read about her that she does feel things deeply. She, you know, is an emotional person. She's not cold or anything like that, but you have that at the beginning. And so for a portion of the story, you're held at arm's length from Chloe, and I just don't think I ever recovered from that. I will say something that was very, very good, better than average, was some of the representation stuff. So Chloe has a chronic illness, and I can't speak to how good the representation was necessarily, but I felt as somebody kind of on the outside looking in that I learned a lot, and it gave me a lot of like sympathy and empathy for her as a character, which I thought was really neat. And I love the way that they involved her chronic illness in her plot, where it wasn't like a big deal, but it was something that was like ever present in her life. And then also Red was recovering from that abusive relationship, so I thought that the conversation around that and the ways that he had to adjust his life and kind of recover and all of that was really great as well. So I think those two things will be memorable, but the chemistry between the two main characters and them kind of as individuals was just kind of okay for me. I found a lot of Chloe and Red's dialogue and their dirty talk cheesy, and at the same time I kind of wish we had more dialogue and less time spent in their heads, because we spend so much time so close to them in their thoughts, it becomes a little bit repetitive. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. Next is The First Girl Child by Amy Harmon. At the very beginning of December, I was like, there were a lot of readathons. There are always a lot of readathons, and I'm always like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and I'm really bad at following through. But I was like prepared to participate in a couple of readathons, maybe 2 or 3 or something. And so I was trying to find books that fit into, I don't even remember this, I'm sorry, which one it was or what the prompt was, but I know that it had to do something with like a fantasy book. But also I was really stressed out at the beginning of December because it's like a very busy time for me at work. So I was working super long hours, I was stressed, and I didn't want to come home and read anything stressful. Like I wanted something that had low friction, not a bummer of any kind, like, and a happy ending kind of thing. So that's romance in a lot of ways. So I was trying to see if I could find like a fantasy romance in order to fill in this whatever prompt it was. I did a Google search to that effect, like fantasy romance, and I came across Amy Harmon's name. At the very beginning of this book, we have a woman who has just given birth to a baby, and she finds her brother to basically entrust this baby to her brother because she's dying after giving birth. And as she's dying, she uses her blood to basically seal a curse on the land that they live in on Salok, in order to basically say that no girl children are going to be born to anybody in this land, because they don't treat women right. And she's like, nobody else is gonna hurt, no other women are gonna be like abused and maltreated like I have been. And so she seals that curse. And also the other part of it is that she kind of blesses her son at the same time and basically grants him the ability of like superhuman strength. That baby boy Bear is raised with his uncle. His uncle is a keeper, so they're this kind of group of people who preserve the magic in the land. So they're the ones who deal in runes and things of that nature. It's almost kind of monk-like, and they live in a community like that. So Bear grows up with the keepers, and so his fate becomes intertwined with the first girl child born into Salok after the curse. And this girl is born to the king, and so Bear becomes kind of like a guardian for her. The king is a bad man though, so between Bear and the princess, they kind of have to team up to face off against the king's lies, the curse on the land, and all of that jazz. This was incredibly slow, but I enjoyed this. I especially enjoyed the beginning, the slower part of this, because it was all world building, and I really liked the world in this. I like the magic, I like the premise, I like learning about each of the clans. I like seeing Bear as he grew up and just kind of learning about what his life was like with the keepers and how his path eventually kind of crosses with the princess. Even though I really enjoyed that part of the story, my biggest gripe with this is that there wasn't enough kissing, and then there also wasn't enough plot in terms of like the fantasy. There was plenty of world, but not enough plot. So this didn't feel like the kind of romance that I enjoy. It wasn't like heavy enough on the romance, but it also didn't feel like the kind of fantasy that I like, because it wasn't they didn't have enough plot to be that thing. So it's just like in this awkward middle. That said, I loved Bear a lot. I liked him as a main character. I am a sucker for like big mountain men who are squishy on the inside, and that was Bear's character for sure. I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next is Year One by Nora Roberts. This is a little indication of how I pick what I'm gonna read. I'm such a mood reader, it has no rhyme or reason, honestly. But I was going through, I don't check this app with any kind of regularity, but my sisters do. They'll send me things off of this app all the time. One day while we were together, I was like, okay, I'll check mine as well. So scrolling through Time Hop, and I was looking at old Twitter statuses from a year ago, and they all had to do with that one time that Tomi Adeyemi accused Nora Roberts of stealing her title. If you guys are not familiar with this Twitter drama, let me tell you. Basically what happened is that Tomi Adeyemi put up a Twitter status that accused Nora Robert of stealing her title, her book title. The thing is that, one, if Tomi had looked at all into it, she would have seen that Nora wrote her book first. Two, they weren't even the same exact title. Like, it was similar, like very similar for sure, but I don't know, it wasn't like word for word. And three, Nora Roberts doesn't have to steal Tomi Adeyemi's book title to sell books. Nora Roberts has been selling books all over the place. Anyways, you get the idea. So it was just like very wild. A couple of days of like lots of Twitter statuses going back and forth. I forgot about it until I was on Time Hop, and I was like laughing about it on Twitter, and I was like, I never like checked out that book. Like, I never followed up. I thought at that moment when all of this was happening, I would like to read some of Nora Roberts' fantasy. That would be interesting, but I never followed up until now. I read Year One by Nora Roberts. It is the first book in the series, and basically it follows a big cast of characters as they are living through a pandemic that basically is ending the world. It's apocalyptic and then kind of post-apocalyptic. This like sickness has taken out a big portion of the world's population already, and we're at the point where systems are starting to fail. So people are realizing that as more and more people die, like governments are falling, things are no longer working. There's a lot of looting and a lot of violence, and so people are starting to rethink how they're going to continue to live. And the other portion of the story is that as more people are dying, as the pandemic is kind of spreading, magic is rising in the society, and people are discovering that they have magical abilities. I think the biggest pull for me in the story were the characters. I also think it was good that I kind of went in not expecting much. You hear post-apocalyptic and you kind of get a sense of what story you're getting into, but this had a really big urban fantasy bent because of the magical element of it. But all in all, the pull here for me was this like big cast of characters, getting to know them and seeing each of their journeys, and then seeing as all of their paths cross. They started to come together in like little groups, and then those groups would meet, and all of that was really neat. I think that I was really enjoying this, even though it was a slower book, and I don't mind slow books. So it's a pacing thing for me again. So I enjoyed the slow build and all of that, like those threads coming together and seeing that happen. But then at the end, it really picks up and we speed past the resolution. Like, so many things happen so quickly, and it happens apart from the main, like you don't hear from the main cast of characters. You follow one person who branches off, and then so much happens to her so quickly. We even like speed up in time, and it threw the rest of the book very much off balance. But in general, I'm invested, and I would like to read the super not plagiarized of Blood and Bone. Like, I want to see where this goes, and I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next is The Witches Are Coming by Lindy West. This is her second collection of essays, and this one covers topics that are a bit more political. She does still talk about a lot of like internet culture, pop culture, and she deals a lot with like trolling and things of that nature, and that is all incorporated in The Witches Are Coming, but this definitely had more of like a political bent. I really loved her first collection of essays, Shrill, and last year I also watched the Hulu series Shrill based on Lindy's experience in those collection of essays, and I really enjoyed that as well. She talks a little bit about Shrill in The Witches Are Coming and a little bit about the experience of getting to work on that, which was really neat, having come from the experience of watching it. I think that it helps when you're reading collections like this if you agree with like the views and the political stances of the person you are reading from, which in a lot of cases I agree with Lindy West. But more than that, I just think she has a knack for taking a look at like these big complex ideas and these big picture things and then distilling them and putting them into words where they seem so simple and they seem so digestible and they seem like duh, like that seems so simple and clear to me, and I don't understand why it's like not so simple and clear to everyone. But also that's her skill, that's her writing skill, that's her ability to like parse this information. I just love her humor as well. I think that she cuts in a way, she's very direct in a way that I enjoy. It never feels like it's punching down either. It just is very sharp. I enjoyed the essays where she takes a look at something that is personal to her, a little snippet of her everyday life, of her family, or something that happened to her, and she ties it back to a larger idea or a larger topic. I thought that those were well done, and that's part of the way that she gets them into those easily delivered packages and like into that humor, into that place where it feels like common sense, because she's tying it into something that is very relatable. And the reason that this is coming before the rest of my 5-star reads on this list is because in collections of essays, I prefer when there is like a stronger theme, where there's a stronger connection from essay to essay. This had something of a theme. She talks about witch hunts. Obviously the witches are coming is pulled from that idea of witch hunts and the way that things are called witch hunts here without like understanding what that term means. And so that comes up a couple of times, but I didn't feel like it was a strong through line or it was used consistently enough to feel like this was like a very well curated collection of essays. Obviously the themes and topics are there, but it could have been a little bit stronger specifically to my preference. It's kind of my only quibble. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Saying that now makes me think that it will maybe be bumped up a little bit, 4.5 out of 5 stars. This was a really good collection of essays. Number 3 is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This was my October 2019 Book of the Month pick, and it is surrealist fiction about a woman named Lillian whose old college roommate basically reaches back out to her and says that she needs her help taking care of her stepchildren who are now going to be living with her because their mother died. The twist is that these kids light on fire when they are upset, when they're feeling any sort of strong emotions, they combust. Their father is a politician and he's got his eyes on the White House. He wants to one day become president. So this is very inconvenient to his political career. And obviously he wasn't very involved in the kid's life previous to their mother dying. So he wants to keep this on the low as much as possible, which is where Lillian comes in, and why they're kind of involving her. They trust her enough to take care of these kids and keep them from setting on fire. This book was weird and I loved it. I loved it so much. It's not one that I would like universally recommend because it is very weird, but I was just immediately invested in Lillian and in these children and their story. I felt so much. My heart went out to Lillian. She comes from like a poorer background compared to her roommate Madison, and so she's really smart. She ends up getting this opportunity to go to this very good school, but she kind of gets cheated out of that opportunity for reasons you find out throughout the story, and you really see why this has affected her and hurt her so much. But it is something very bad that happened to her that keeps her kind of stuck, so she's never been able to like grow past it or get over it. That is such like a relatable problem, to feel stuck because of something that was beyond your control, and just getting to see her like how she never moved past it, and how the introduction of these children and this found family basically is helping her move past that place where she was stuck in. Like I said, I also love the children a lot. I love this idea that they have feelings and they catch on fire, and just like the entire like symbolism and metaphor of like setting things on fire when you're mad, and the people who want to put that out quite literally in the story, and the exploration of being allowed to feel things, especially when life isn't fair and when you've been dealt sucky cards, but then also how do you move on from that. That was very much, I felt like, the main ideas of this story, and it was just done so well. It is very weird. It's very short. It's not super plot heavy. It's more like slice of life, snapshot kind of story. You just are looking at this very specific time in all of their lives. It had so many things that I love. I love weird books. I love symbolic stories. I love found families. And I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. Next is Catch and Kill, Lies, Spies, and a Conspiracy to Protect Predators by Ronan Farrow. I saw this book pop up on a lot of best of 2019 lists, but I committed to it because I was going through Audible's list. I am weak for nonfiction books read by the author. It's my favorite way to consume nonfiction. If the author reads their own audiobook, I'm like in. So I went into this basically because of that. That's what I knew. It was on a lot of best of lists, nonfiction read by the author, and I had a vague sense that this was also about like the Me Too movement and the Harvey Weinstein scandal. First thing that I learned was that Ronan Farrow is Mia Farrow's son, so I had no idea about that connection at all until I started reading. Second thing that I found was that this was a much bigger, more complex story than just like Harvey Weinstein. Like that's how it started, but it was really about Ronan's reporting, how he researched the story, how he broke the story, and how the opposition that he found while he was trying to get the story out revealed like deeper things at NBC where he was working. So it also dips into Matt Lauer's story, and then it also talks about Trump and the people who have accused him of sexual assault. It ends up being this wider look at what the title says, so the way that systems protect predators. I loved it for the way that it was like just a really thoughtful piece of reporting, but also it had these elements that were mixed in that felt memoir-ish. He talks a little bit about his own life, and it is a very heavy topic, obviously, so lots of content warnings, especially for the audiobook. They include a clip of a tape where Harvey Weinstein is caught on tape harassing a woman, and it's just a few seconds of like playing this tape, and it honestly like rocked my world. It was so upsetting, truly. So it can be very heavy, but Farrow adds these moments of like hopefulness and levity because of the way that he also talks to us about his life. I love nonfiction that has a strong like narrative presence, and this at times felt like it was reading a mystery thriller, even though I kind of like knew how it ended, even though it hasn't really ended. But just the way that he was like feeding us the pieces of the story as he experienced them really did have that strong narrative like feel to it. There were times reading this that I just felt really like low. It's hard not to feel a little bit like hopeless about systems that are built to protect predators. It was kind of like draining, but at the end of the day, I think that the power and the hopefulness of the women who came forward knowing what they would face, because when women talk up about things that they have experienced, they don't always find support. So I think the hopefulness of knowing that there are people out there who are willing to fight so that the truth comes out, they don't have to, but they do. I think that at the end of the day, that portion of the story helped balance some of the darker pieces of the story, and it just was super important, I think, to read. It just felt important while I was reading it. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read last month, and my favorite book that I read last month, was Little Weirds by Jenny Slate. Jenny Slate is a comedian and an actress and an author, and Little Weirds is a collection of essays with a little bit of like microfiction built in. It blends some surrealist aspects into this memoir nonfiction. It's a really just like a blend of all of those things in a way that I know this will also not be for everyone, because it is as weird as you would expect from it being called Little Weirds. It rambles a little bit, but it's also so pure and honest and earnest and hopeful. I just felt like Slate did a phenomenal job capturing her essence and her experiences and translating that and putting it on paper. She very much leans into her weirds, and she takes up space, and she's unapologetic. And she manages to convey all of that with these turns of phrase and just this beautiful, evocative writing. There was just something about this that made me feel a whole lot. I felt like a lot of pieces of it, of what she was explaining about her experience, about love, about engaging with people, were super relatable, and I loved the kind of like stream of consciousness rambling aspect of it. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. That's it for me today. If you have read or would like to read any of the books that I mentioned, let's chat down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. Lies, secrets, lies, spies, and a conspiracy to protect predators.